Honorable Nobel Laureate Professor Prof Tirole, respected Chief Secretary, Government of Rajasthan, Srimati Usha Sarmaji, Director, Indo-French Center for Promotion of Advanced Research, Professor Nitin Seth, convener of the event, Professor Dangaj, scientific officers from French Embassy, New Delhi, officials from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, vice chancellors and directors of nearby institutions, distinguished guests, and all my fellow colleagues, staffs, and dear students. A special thank to Ms. Tirole for traveling too long and be part of this event. Now, the event as a whole, organized by MNIT Jaipur and Indo-French Center for Promotion of Advanced Research. So the event is part of prestigious institute lecture series of MNIT. Now, what I wanted to highlight when this opportunity has come to MNIT Jaipur, as I jumped into that, and I'm so honored that Professor Joe is with us. Now, MNIT Jaipur, for the benefit of especially for our chief guests, wanted to inform you that it is more than 6 decades old institution, and it is one of 31 NITs across the country. And we do have approximately 6,000 odd students, and there are 13 departments and 8 center of excellences, and we offer 8 undergraduate and 26 postgraduate programs across the institution. So the very interesting part that even though we offer UG, PG, and PhD programs, but from time to time for the state level and central level, central government employees, we also train them from time to time. Now, the very important part I'd like to highlight today, the institute has 15 international and 17 national live MOUs which are in active stage, which include Stanford, US, University of Dundee, UK, and University of Saskatchewan, Canada. Now, coming to the event, the theme of fighting the war against climate change, which is contemporary, as 21st century is dominated by advancement in manufacturing systems and applications in the area of information technology. Industry need to employ advanced technologies to capture the requirement of sustainability. Sustainability is a buzzword today that we all need to follow the requirements for sustainability, and which become important in the present era, especially considering carbon emission. And I'm very sure Professor Job will enlighten us more about carbon emission and the challenges in the future. Now, what exactly happening today due to the human behavior, the way we follow our day-to-day life, we don't care about Earth, but it is high time that we also respect the Earth's need, and we cannot keep on spoiling its greenery anymore. And to highlight, there are a few important topics today. One is climate change, loss of biodiversity, public health issues such as COVID-19, which cannot be ignored, that we have recently faced. Now, one important thing I like to highlight as an institution, MNIT 2020, which is National Education Policy, that is the main agenda of Government of India today. And we are very proud to announce that MNIT Jaipur has adopted most of the important factors of MNIT 2020 related to engineering education to our city. And we are also happy to inform that our undergraduate students from this year onwards having the flexibility to create the skill to interdisciplinary areas, but not just limited to their own specialized. And that's what we like to highlight at this stage, that we are working hard to take this institution to its real time, my dear friends. But now the dream become reality due to the footprint of Professor John as well as Ma'am Professor. I think you both have changed our page with your footprints. Once again, a big round of applause for you. On behalf of MNIT, I thank you all being part of this event, and I'm very sure that this 1 hour, 1.5 hours program from now will be certainly a memory in future for all of us. Thank you very much once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. Indo-French Center for the Promotion of Advanced Research is a model for international collaborative research in advanced areas of science and technology. I feel elated to share that Professor Nitin Seth, Director, is here with us to orient the audience. Please, sir.
First of all, I want to welcome to each and every one of you from the same city who host us at such a beautiful gathering and beautiful place. First and foremost, I was not prepared to give a speech, and this is not my time to give a speech. So I will not take much time, but just thank MNIT and Ushaman for joining us on this particular occasion. I would like to specially mention the thanks to Dr. DDL, my friend from Embassy, who helped a lot in managing the entire show seamlessly. So thanks, DDL, for all of this. And I just only say thanks and let us enjoy the lecture.
Thank you so much, sir. I feel pleasure introducing Chief Secretary of Rajasthan, Mrs. Usha Sharma. Mrs. Sharma is the second woman to hold the top bureaucratic post in the state. She has also been given additional charge of Rajasthan State Mines and Minerals Limited. A 1985 batch IAS officer, she has been on the central deputation in New Delhi since 2012. She has been the Secretary of the Sports and Youth Affairs Ministry and has also served as the Additional Director General of Tourism and Director General of Archaeological Survey of India. May I invite you, ma'am, for your address, please.
Nobel Laureate Professor Prof Tirole, Director of the Institute MNIT, Professor N.P. Padi, Director Indo-French Center for Promotion of Advanced Research, Professor Nitin Seth, the leader of the event, Professor Rai, Scientific Officer from the French Embassy, Madam Tirole, officials from the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, Vice Chancellor, Director of the Institute. I'm given to understand that many have joined virtually also this conference. Yes, Mrs. Director MNIT, Nivedita Bisoits, delegates who are attending the event online mode, faculty members, and yes, it's a matter of great pride to be sharing the platform with Nobel Laureate Prof Tirole. And I am really grateful to Mr. Fadi for inviting me to be a part of this function. And special thanks to Mr. Nitin Seth, who initiated this process of organizing this prestigious lecture all across the country. And I have to thank Madam Tirole for taking up this very arduous journey. And I'm told by Mr. Nitin Seth that I suppose this is the fourth destination you are searching, that you're coming from Amritsar and then you're going to other places also. So this surely is a great indication of what the person can do to the scale, the guys and are very, very good for accepting the invitation and as chief secretary on behalf of the state. I'm very, very thankful that you would make it possible that we have been given this opportunity to present you, and we're really, really excited to tell you on a subject which is really good, as mentioned by Professor Pari. It's a huge pleasure, matter of pride that MNIT, along with the institute headed by Mr. Nitin Singh, is organizing this event. And as Director MNIT mentioned, that MNIT is a very, very prestigious institute. It's a 6-decade old institute formed by an act of parliament and CEFIPRA. CEFIPRA? We call it CEFIPRA? So this is a binational center established way back in 1987. Just 2 years old in the service. So this the mandate was given to propose cooperation between India and France, particularly in science, technology, and innovation. So this is usually supported by the Ministry of Science and Technology. Many must have held this charge, but it was Mr. Nitin Singh who decided to take up this initiative and call some real veterans and stalwarts to come to India and be a part of our learning process. As the theme of the day, today's function is that climate change. We're all witnessing in our lifetime how the climate is changing, how the weather are being postponed. Like I remember that we used to witness onset of monsoons in the month of last week of June or July. Now this has shifted for at least a month and a half, and we see rainfall which we've never seen in the month of September and October. So there's a delayed monsoon, there's a delayed winter, there's a delayed summer, and the monsoons at times are absolutely unprecedented. Winters are also very harsh. So then which we never thought of that we would be witnessing these phenomena. There's a reason for it. So, I mean, it's a huge challenge, and each and every one of us needs to be sensitized towards environment, towards protection of the environment, towards going green. That's how all these climate change meetings and environment meetings talks are held. The last one we had was in Egypt, this one only. Government of India and also globally, there's a lot of emphasis on this subject, and it's so good that we have a veteran with us who will be talking on the climate change. We all know that 21st century is dominated by advancement in manufacturing systems, especially IT, ICT, and we need to, industry also needs to take care in terms of the sustainability, in terms of the requirement, and because the unsustainable human activity, because of this, the planet Earth is facing various challenges such as worldwide environment deterioration, climate change, loss of biodiversity, leading to a lot of health issues. I mean, Delhi, we've been working very, very hard to bring down the AQI level, but it's just too bad. And I mean, whatever measure we take, somewhere we are not able to handle this pollution level. And it's causing huge, huge side effects and adverse effects on the health system. In fact, at times you feel that you are a passive smoker. So, time that we realize that each one of us realize what is the role and responsibility of each citizen. If it means certain sacrifices, we need to do these exercises so that we leave a good legacy. Generation after us do not suffer on this account. It's a big, I mean, I'm happy to learn that it has taken enough care in terms of organizing this whole function in a hybrid mode so that large number of people get the benefit of hearing what Mr. Tirole has to share with us. And I'm told that around 1,000 people have joined us offline and online. I hope this event will provide lead to the world in terms of fighting against harmful impacts of the environment on planet Earth. And I really am very excited and I'm really looking forward to getting and learning about what you can learn. And I promise that the all of wisdom which we would be sharing, we definitely carry them forward, and some of it we shall include in our policy which we will be making for our home state. And with these words, I once again say a big thank you to Professor, and I thank Director MNIT to have taken all the efforts to organize this and invite me to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Proceeding ahead, now may I request Professor Nitin Seth, Mrs. Ulfa Sharma, Professor Henry Bari, and Professor Laureate to occupy the seats down and listen the address of Professor John Tirole. I feel privileged inviting our expert for the day. Professor John Tirole is honorary chairman of the Foundation J.J. Lafont Toulouse School of Economics and scientific director of TSE Partnership. He is also the founding member of the Institute for Advanced Study in Toulouse. He served as a professor of economics at MIT. He was president of the Econometric Society in 1998 and of the European Economic Association in 2001. After completion of his bachelor's degree in engineering and decision mathematics, he earned a specialized doctorate in decision mathematics and a PhD in economics from MIT in 1981. His credentials include imparting distinguished lectures and publications of about 200 articles, as well as 12 books, including Economics for Common Good and the Theory of Industrial Organizations. His accolades include the Uriel-Johnson Prize of the European Economic Association in 1993, the Gold Medal of the CNRS in 2007, winner of the BBVA Frontiers of Knowledge Award in Economics, the CME MSRA Award, the Levi Strauss Prize in 2010, and the Ross Prize in 2013. He is the laureate of the 2014 Nemes Prize in Economics and received the various Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel in the same year. His contribution does not limit to the field of economics, as its framework for designing regulations has found applications in several industries ranging from banking to telecommunications. His Nobel Prize in 2014 was awarded for his extensive analysis of market power and regulations. It is indeed an honor to listen to such an erudite. May I invite our experts to address the participants. Over to you.
Uses the microphone. Thanks a lot for you for your one time and very pleased to be I also want to thank the students for the wonderful right now. Very excited to take credit for the interest today. Very nice of you. So this is actually organized by CEFIPRA and the National Academy. Of course, we already started Professor State and Professor Diago. And that's a very nice thing to do. And MNIT is actually, I think, I'm an economist, and I'm very keen to be in engineering school. Actually, I studied engineering for 6 years before becoming an economist. So I'm an engineer by training. Engineering and mathematics is a branch of physics, another mathematics. Also engineering for 6 years. 6 years, and then I became an economist, and I could tell you why. I think that growth in spirit and not like it was a huge move for me to do. And I did one of my career, like it, that moved my career. I did want to do. We have when I think it's a very nice program, so maybe some of you will want to come and study in Toulouse, a master's degree and a PhD degree in English. I've been in English for a long time, actually. The undergraduate part is not totally in English. Okay, so in the next selection, I'm very honored to be here. And I will be covering two topics. First, will be some sort of a strategy on the perspective, which is the European perspective. Now, this is, of course, a very important topic for you. The suffering quite a lot from climate change. And it's also a sensitive topic for the international mind, which is the nation of the Western world use a lot of CO2 as a medium. And what about the industrialization of the emerging countries? That raises a number of issues, and I'll give you my views on that. You will have a debate on the but what I'm going to do is to expose what is happening. You hear about Trump, this Trump was a chief economist at the end, and also Professor at MNIT. And I was asked by Nobel Laureate to write a report on number of key challenges for the future, and which was three. And the first one was climate change. So I'm basically going to go through the recommendations we made. It was not a report for the president, it was for France and Europe. That was going to tell you what we said. Okay, and then if I would like to give you some thoughts about social responsibility, which is broader than climate change. Okay. Now. Okay, so the world is climate change.
Hello. एक साल फोन पड़ा उसको एक साल फोन पड़ा उसको चेंजर पॉइंटर यूज करना था ना
So the what we told in this report climate change is that obviously climate is a time bomb. What do I mean by time bomb? And why are we in the situation that we are in now? There are several reasons for that, but the time bomb is an issue for which if you don't act for a year or two, then not much happens. It has consequences, but they are delayed, and those consequences are delayed over time. But the consequence of that is that in every country in the world, there's some procrastination. We can always do it tomorrow, right? So for a year or two, it doesn't really matter, but it's a year or two, plus a year or two, plus a year or two. And then you end up with 30 years of inactions since the year submit. So that's the time bomb. And there is an absolute urgency. I don't have to convince you of that. It's actually very important to act. There is much delay in decarbonization, and perhaps what is less well known is that there is also much delay in green R&D. I will come back to that because that's going to be part of the solution, I think. We are way behind. There's some good news, fortunately. So, for example, there's been a lot of progress in wind and solar energy. And they are not perfect energies because they are intermittent. We don't know how to store energy yet. We know how to do it, but we don't know how to do it at a reasonable cost. There are some issues with transmission grids which are not ready actually to accommodate the large increase in demand coming from heat pumps and electric cars and the like. So there are lots of issues to be dealt with, but it's good news that solar have been delivered. Light actually is also very good news. Electric vehicle, we see must make progress on that, but it's good news. But you have lots of other things like alternative proteins, you have vertical farming, all kinds of things that raise the hope, and we have some hope of actually doing better. The other thing is that, except in some countries, by and large, there's a wide perception by citizens that there is some urgency. And that didn't used to be the case, I guess, 30 years ago. So those are the good news, but, we also have the bad news. Okay, so I don't know about India, we could exchange with that, but in France or in Europe more generally, there is, and I would apply some of the US as well. People realize that if you fight climate change, there will be winners and losers. There will be people who win, of course, the people who actually, especially young people, and the future generation, but the losers, of course, are people who actually have to pay. And it's worth paying, of course, but you have to take into account that some people will lose. So you may have heard about the episode in France 3 years ago when we had a carbon tax of about 55 euros per ton, which by the way is not that much, because the economists say we need 80 to 100 euros right now. So the price of carbon, if you wanted to give the right incentives for the private sector and the public sector and individuals to actually reduce their consumption to meet the target. They agree maybe the target, the 1.5 target is no longer achievable, but you will need 100 euros of dollars. Okay. Now the time the price of carbon, the carbon tax in fact was 55 euros. And the entire country was in the streets, demonstrating, saying we don't want to pay carbon. And that's really an issue. Those demonstrators have a few correct points. A carbon tax is regressive. What do we mean by regressive? It means that as a fraction of the income, the poorer people pay more. They pay less overall, but as a fraction of the income, they pay less. They pay more. And that means regressive, so in terms of redistributive consequences, like some time. By the way, it's the same for many ecological policies. So if you think about who enjoys an electric car, well, it's mostly the upper class. You can afford the electric car. Who enjoys solar panel subsidies for solar panels on the roofs? Well, the owners of houses or apartments, and of course, they tend to be richer than the average citizen. So the perceptions there are quite correct. Some are incorrect. So, for example, there have been lots of studies in France saying, do you like this policy or not? So if you present it as a tax, if you say, it's a carbon tax, people decide it. Okay? If you say it's a subsidy to green stuff, they know it. But if you think a little bit, a subsidy is a tax because you have to pay for it. So a subsidy is a tax, there is no question about it. So something which is very similar to a carbon tax is what's called a cap and trade mechanism, an ETS system. The cap and trade mechanism basically sets a carbon budget. We can emit that much. And if you emit, you have to buy pollution permit. And then the market of pollution permits delivers a price. And anyone who wants to pollute has to pay that price. So it's like a carbon tax. If you have too many permits, you can resell them. So it's actually a good incentive mechanism. You benefit also from reducing the pollution. So that's very important. But that we have had in Europe since 2005. And actually it went up to 100 euros per ton. Recently it's now lower, but it's not negligible. Whereas the Swedes in Sweden, they have had over 100 dollars per ton for 30 years. So it's actually, the Swedes were in advance in a sense. They were way in advance. Europe in general was very in advance, but we have had that since 2005. Nobody has ever noticed. Why? Because that particular thing is paid by electricity company or cement or aluminum companies, but the consumer never sees it. It sees it down the line, it's its prices, but it doesn't know. The consumer doesn't know that it's paying a tax. Feed-in tariffs. So feed-in tariffs, I know some of you are experts in power systems. The feed-in tariff is really some kind of guaranteed price if, for example, you have solar on your house. Okay? It's guaranteed prices for solar and wind. It's a subsidy. It's a very high subsidy sometimes. And it's paid by the electricity consumers. It's part of their energy bill. But again, it's not as visible as carbon tax. And you have many other things that you can discuss. Now, let me make another remark. In France or in the US, politicians very often talk about green growth. Green growth will be the idea that you can be very green at the same time grow faster. Now, if that were the case, we would have done it, right? We would have been stupid not to do it because it's nicer to be green and it's nicer to grow faster. So it's basically trying to soothe people. It's a slogan to soothe people. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Now, I understand why politicians are doing that. But of course, that also conveys the idea that you have nothing to pay to save the planet. And to save the planet, of course, we have nothing to pay. We should be paying something. There's a cost. And this cost is growing over time. The more we procrastinate, the more expensive it's going to be. Okay? So we have to think. And we have to, as an economist, we have to understand perceptions, whether we like them or not, and find a holistic approach. Not one measure, but many measures in order to reconcile the impact and acceptability. So as an economist, I want impact. I want policies which are actually going to do something for the planet. I don't want to look green. I don't want to appear green. I want to be green, which is different. However, it has also to be acceptable, and that's one of it. So for Europe, we recommended a series of measures, which I'm going to detail. Some of them are not very original, but and we'll discuss the applicability to the rest of the world. Okay? So the first thing, by the way, we were a commission. They were Olivier Blanchard and myself, and then we chose 24 economists around the world, and mainly US and Europe. And there were only 8 out of the 24, only 8 were. And we did, and there was a total consensus. People from very different horizons. There was a total consensus that we needed a carbon price. So it could be a carbon tax, it could be a cap and trade system. But the idea is that we need a carbon price if we want to fight climate change. Was a kind of a consensus among the Commission, as it is among economists in general around the world. Why? Because you want to create real incentives to reduce pollution. That's very important. You want people to actually be made accountable for what they cost to the world. And therefore, you really want to have this carbon tax as an incentive. And it allows you, and that's something that people often don't understand, it allows you to achieve your pollution target at the lowest cost. So if you have a carbon price at $100 per ton, those who can basically reduce their pollution for $20 or $50, they will do it. It's cheaper than paying the tax. Those for whom it costs $1,000 per ton are not going to do it. So in a sense, there will be self-selection so that the people who are going to reduce their pollution are actually those for whom it is easiest to reduce the pollution. And that's the beauty of a price, of course. As an economist, we are familiar with. Two things which are maybe less familiar. The first thing is that we want a carbon price also encourages R&D. Many of you are engineers. Maybe some of you will launch a startup, maybe a green startup. And what will happen the day you have a green innovation? You will want to make some money. You have taken loans and get financing for VC and so on. You will want to make some money out of your innovation. That's normal. And the question is, how do you monetize your green? If there is no carbon price, so if it's free or almost free, in many countries it's $5. If it's almost free, nobody will want to buy a license to innovation because they can pollute for free, right? So if you want to encourage R&D, you really have to have a carbon price. And that's one of the reasons why we have a physical freedom, because people still expect there will be a carbon price. Finally, that simplifies the decision of the states and of the economic actor. There are billions every day of decisions of households, of firms, of administrations, which have to do with CO2 emissions. Just take your car or whatever. And then that's a simple thing because everything is embodied into the price of gas, the price of people, the price of pollution. Okay, so this is yeah, answer myself. If I'm a consumer, yeah, that's good. If I'm a consumer and I want to be green, and I'm going to the marketplace on Saturday morning and I'm buying some tomatoes. And there are tomatoes from Toulouse, which is my own town, and there are tomatoes from Spain. Spain is a bit warmer than Toulouse. Toulouse is actually warmer than Paris, but it, I say, oh, tomatoes from Spain, nice, but you need trucks to bring them to Toulouse, so that emits CO2. How much? I have no clue. How much CO2 was emitted along the way? Absolutely no. Now, what about tomatoes from Toulouse? No transportation, that's great. But maybe it was wrong because the climate is a bit colder. Maybe it was grown under a warehouse, which uses energy. So what should I do? So that's me trying to wonder that the newspaper caricature. They call me the economist amateur. So yeah, they made fun of me because I was comparing different tomatoes. But that's going to bring me to the second part of it. I mean, this is actually a serious remark, which is that if we want to behave socially responsibly, we need the information. And that's not easy. Often I don't know whether I have different choices. I don't know which one is the green one. I just have no clue. Okay, so I will come back to that with this issue, and this is very big also now in Europe, especially, but also big in the US. It's a socially responsible investment. It's not only as a consumer, but also as an investor. What kind of companies do you invest in? And we go back to. Okay, so I believe, and I don't believe in that, but in theory, you would like to have one price worldwide, identical for all sectors, and the same for household firms and the public sector. Why? Because when there's a ton of CO2 which is being emitted, it doesn't matter who emits it, it's a ton of CO2, and the damage on the planet is the same. Okay? So whether you emit a ton of CO2 or I in France with a ton of CO2, it's exactly the same impact. Okay? So that's in theory, that's what should be the case. And the other point I want to make is that there's a need for an overarching picture. It's not only the direct impact that you have, so some of you are in supply chains. What matters is not remission in the final round of the final stage of the supply chain, but it's also along the way. So electric car involves some amounts of pollution, of course. It can be green or it can be less green. So if your electricity that you are using, your electric car is made from coal, then it's highly polluting. So in that case, the electric car is not as green. It should be. Actually, in France, it's a little bit better having an electric car because electricity in France is made without almost any emission. Because we have 75% of electricity is from nuclear. So we have very little emission, very few emissions. And that's, And I will come back to the clean development method. Okay, I could say a few words. So you may remember that the students are probably too young to know, but in 1997, we had the Kyoto Agreement, which was one of the big agreements. And there was an interesting policy which was designed by the Kyoto Agreement, which basically consisted in saying, okay, let's have actions in emerging markets and reward those actions through the price of them. So concretely say, if a European company spend money to prevent deforestation in Indonesia, for example, then this company could get pollution permits in Europe. It was not created, but it was about to be created on the ETS, the cap and trade mechanism in Europe. So that was the idea, is to use a market price, which was a price on the European trading system, to reward people who would actually save CO2 emission in less developed and emerging countries. Okay. There were problems with that. There were lots of administrative issues. But there was a more fundamental issue. The more fundamental issue is it's what's called leakage. It's one of the many forms of leakages. So if I save some piece of forest in Indonesia, now the reason why this forest was cut in the first place, would have been cut otherwise, is that the people wanted to produce soy or wood or something like that. Now that means that at the margin, the price of soy or wood will go up a bit. Okay, so if you have many actions like this, the price of soy or wood will go up, which means that there will be an incentive for others to actually cut forest, deforest elsewhere. So it's what really economists call generative effect, which is that there's a price reaction which says, okay, you're being nice because you're protecting a forest there, but actually, because the price of soil wood goes up, then there will be other forests which would be. Okay. So that was a complicated mechanism. It was well-minded, but in the end, not very efficient. Okay, so the carbon price. One of the reasons why people don't like carbon prices is often not done well. So we explain in the report that first you should have no exemption or very few exemptions. It's very tempting for a government to give exemptions to specific categories. And in France, we have a number of those. And the yellow jackets who were in the street actually were saying, it's unfair. Look, the farmers are not subject to it. The truckers, the fishermen are not subject to it, and so on. Why should we be paying? Your thing is that if you ask some categories to pay, and then you exempt the others, it's considered as being very unfair. Second issue is basically offshoring. So something we have been worried in Europe for a long time is that if we put a carbon tax or we have a cap and trade mechanism, so we raise the price of carbon, then those industries which use a lot of carbon will move abroad to a country where there is no price of carbon. So this offshoring, and then there is another leakage, of course, because Europe will not have done anything. Basically because sure it's polluting less, but somebody is polluting more. So there's a leakage, and in the end, not much effect. So what we recommended with some caveats is a carbon border adjustment mechanism. So basically, the idea is that at the frontier of Europe, those countries which do not have a decent carbon price would have to pay an import duty. Now, the difficult thing is the following: is how do you compute this import duty? Okay, that's the difficulty, because you don't know the pollution of your importers. Because, say, in France or Europe, you may not see what's happening in China. So it's hard to measure pollution in China for Europe. And therefore, that will be based on estimates. Okay? And by the way, that's what the European Union is going to do. So I, as an economist, I'm not thrilled by this measure because it's going to be very rough. I see more as a pressure to be put on countries with no better carbon. I'm personally in favor of cap and trade as opposed to carbon tax. I'm not going to discuss why, but what we need also is some kind of ability to forecast price in the future. So why is that important? Well, often it's not the current carbon price matters. Current carbon price matters to reduce some emissions, of course, and so on, but for investments. So, am I going to build a coal plant or am I going to build a wind farm? Well, that depends on the future carbon price in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. Okay? So, there must be some ability to forecast the future prices and some stability in that price. So, we have a bunch of recommendations in the report. And we have to do it at least at the European level. Okay? And finally, and that's very important, you have to compensate. Okay. Now, if you have a carbon tax or carbon price, they are going to affect, in particular, the poor, people who have less money. Okay. And then we say that we cannot live it more. So we cannot drive our car anymore. So you want to keep the incentive part. I've seen in France people living very far away from their work. They think gasoline will be cheap forever. So they live very, very far away, which is not a good policy. And it creates a lot of congestion, especially a lot of pollution. So you want to give them incentive. You want them to give incentive to have incentive to carpool. share and right and so on. But you also want to compensate them, even with, even for example, if you give a check to everyone, including to the rich, and so you give the same check to everyone, then the poor people will actually be better off. Of course, they would be paying much more for their energy because of the carbon price. But they would be able to afford it, actually, they would have a surplus of it. And that's not a very clever policy. We could also target the distribution as a function of income. So there are ways, but we need to do the carbon pricing right. Okay, is carbon pricing happening? The answer is yes and no. Just after the Yellow Jacket, there was a French citizens climate convention. Lots of recommendations not mentioning a carbon price. President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act talked mainly about subsidies. As you know, in the US, taxes are not very popular, to say the least. And by the way, gasoline is very cheap in the US, and that's a scandal. And you see the difference in the size of cars in Europe and in the US. US cars are much, much bigger. And things will be even worse. Fortunately, in the US, you have an agency which is called the EPA, in charge of protecting the environment. And this agency has imposed a number of regulations so as to get more miles per liter of gallon of gas, of gasoline. But incentives work. And you see it, in Europe, the price of gas is much higher than the US. And we have smaller car and more fuel efficient cars. Incentives work, it's pretty clear. So that's it. There was some good news. Also, it's still in discussion. So in the project in Europe, the idea was to expand the ETS system, the cap and trade system, not so far it covers cement, aluminum, electricity, but heating and road transport, all kinds of shipping, aviation should be entering, but there are still discussions because, as you might imagine, the lobbies are very much against it. But there are worrisome signals. And with the Ukraine war, the invasion of Ukraine, what has happened is that, of course, the price of gas in particular, but also the price of oil, has gone up. And what's going to happen? What's happening is that people are very upset by that. So, what most governments have said is that we're going to protect you. There will be a shield against price increases. And sure, you understand why people are upset, but at the same time, it's also a message saying you can continue polluting and we guarantee you a low price. And that's not a good message, I say. And you have had some bad events. So, for example, the EU approved a plan by Germany to 27.5 billion to compensate its industries for the cost of purchasing cars. So again, what the German government does is basically saying you can pollute, it's not going to cost you very much because we're going to subsidize it. That's no good. German policy has often been good, but in this respect, energy hasn't been that good. Okay. So, second big important policy is to have research and development subsidies. Okay. By now, just having a carbon price, just controlling our emissions is not going to suffice. It's necessary, but not sufficient. And we need disruptive R&D. So, for example, for solar and wind, we need storage technologies. Okay. Things like that. We need a number of new technologies which are going to deliver a green production of energy. Okay. Now, why is that? There is a high probability that the carbon price will be too low. Okay. There is resistance in all countries against the carbon price. So it will be too low. So the numbers that have been computed by economists are not going to be respected. But there's more really very important role to state in manufacturing some kind of disruptive innovations. And what we propose in the report is some kind of DARPA or ARPA mechanism. Actually, we call for the creation of DARPA energy for the European Union. DARPA actually was a successful experiment with government, in that case the US government, trying to push new innovations with a very specific governance of that process. So that's very important. This is industrial policy. Industrial policy is wonderful if you do it well. It's terrible if you do it poorly. Don't do it if you do it poorly. And the idea is to have something which is really science-based. You are scientists, you must understand that it's the scientists who have to choose that because they know what is more likely to work. It must be independent from political pressure and lobbies. There must be, the head must be a real manager who has authority to basically choose a few interesting projects, not try to give everyone money, that's wasting money. You have to choose the ones which are likely to succeed, to sow where the soil is fertile, and then evaluate and stop. Often administration in the West have difficulty in stopping projects that don't work. If you think about a VC, it's very sad. The VC will finance project in a stage way. And when things don't work, they stop. And then they allocate the money to other projects. Whereas when it's the government, often, we try to prove we were right in the first place, and there is lobbying and so on. And then you keep on financing projects which are going nowhere. So that's very important, especially the private sector, if, when feasible, set objectives and not strive to reach it. So here's a good example. For the vaccine, we didn't know what was going to work. Okay, for the COVID vaccine, we didn't know. It turned out that the least likely technology, messenger RNA, actually turned out to be great. But if the US government or the Europe had said, "Oh no, I don't want this technology, I want this technology," well, perhaps we would not have been here today. Who knows? It's very important to set a goal, but not say you have to do it this way. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Let the market decide. You set the goal, and that's important. Okay. Now I talk about DARPA. That's a policy which is being used also by the National Institute of Health in the US, and also by the NSF in the US or the European Research Council in Europe. Basically, to have a set of policies which are going to make it happen. And I think it's very important because we are very late in the game. We have procrastinated. The situation is extremely difficult. We know we need those disruptive innovations. But if we put enough money as a vaccine example, is actually a message of hope. Science can do wonders. Science can do wonders if you put enough money and you study right. Okay. And that's really the message which is very important. Now, I'm going to go fast. In some cases, you may want to start out the mandates. I'm going to go fast because I would first like to talk a bit about social responsibility, but also an exchange with you. For electricity, as I said, we need to almost double. I don't know about India, but in Europe we need to double the production of electricity, and that requires a lot of investment in generation, but also in the transmission grid. And one of the issues we have in Europe, and you may have in India, and we have in that, but Europe is a large number of states, and each state is still in control of its power grid and dispatch. Of course, there are European institutions trying to coordinate that. But when it comes to investment, it's difficult to make an investment because each country is basically defending its own interest. But the European interest, which is a more important interest, is not represented so much. So that's an issue. We had in the commission some discussion about around nuclear power. We are not experts. We didn't want to go too far into that because we're not experts. Our conclusion is that we have to keep the nuclear power we have. And by the way, whether you like nuclear power or you might be an opponent to nuclear power, at this stage we need nuclear power. Because if in Europe, if we get rid, and think of France, 75% of the energy of electricity is nuclear. You get rid of nuclear, what happens? At best, it's going to be gas. To be coal, I don't know, we will increase our emissions by a huge amount. That would be absolutely terrible. Because wind and solar have their own parts, right? For one thing, when there is no sun or no wind, or if it's in the wrong region, we use gas turbines instead, right? Which is not very green. So that's difficult. Okay, for a new generation of nuclear, we didn't take the stance to do result we are not completely. So what can Europe do? And then we could talk a little bit about outside Europe, in particular emerging countries. Well, that's I think there is a very high cost of delaying negotiation. I never trusted the COP process, to be honest. I think the COP process is useful because it allows an exchange of information and so on. But it's going to be limited. And the cover of the economists is not random one. And that's something I got convinced of a long time ago. Why? Because the COP process, just like any UN process, works by the unit. Now, imagine that you need to have unanimity of 196 countries. Giving a veto right to any such country. So every country has a veto right. Okay? But it's clear that the ones who produce the fossil fuels, they will never want to have a carbon price. They don't want to have a carbon price. Okay? That's not in their interest. So they will always stand up. And at COP21 in Paris, the carbon price was abandoned immediately because, people who organized it, they knew that Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or Russia will never sign such an agreement. And they wanted an agreement to be signed. And that's it. So, I think it's useful, but we should not expect too much from it. So there's rewriting. Everybody expects the other countries to do the effort. It's exacerbated by leakages, of course. The idea that if I put some effort, then it may not be useful anyway because production so will be elsewhere and so on. And so on. So I'm not going to go through that. And by the way, the Green Fund also has been some discussion at COP26 and COP27 when it was designed. I think it was designed in 2017, but I'm not sure. When it was designed, the flow that it was just a collective pledge. And the collective pledge never works. Nobody feels in charge, right? So, I've seen many collective pledges and it never works. Okay. In Europe, what can we do in Europe? Well, not much, to be honest. We are 8% of the pollution. Probably in 20 years from now, we might be 5%, I don't know. What we can do is to be a role model, to be green, to show we can be green. Border tax adjustment to put pressure on other countries. The sort of bullet point is very important, I think, is to have green R&D. And green R&D is actually quite useful because it's possible then to transfer the technology to emerging and less developed countries. Now, it's important that people pay for that technology in rich countries. It's like for medicine, right? If nobody pays, then this is never going to happen. So you need someone to pay. And it seems to me that it would make sense to have a rich country pay for it, and then those licenses given for free to other countries. I think we can also think about the design of international treaties. Okay, maybe I should say before I move on to that, we have a lot of other topics that force today. I think before I move on to social responsibility, and I just want to say a few things about, and we're going to have an exchange on that. I know it's a very sensitive topic, and I don't want to be lecturing you on this, but what would be my advice for emerging markets like India? And I would like to just say what we can do, what we, the rich world, can do, and what we should not be doing in terms of helping. Okay, so, and this is, there will be a bit of provocation here, but I think it's very important actually. So what we can do, I think, is two things. Is compensation, which is the idea of the Green Fund. So poor countries, percent, that on average to be suffering more from climate change, and they want to finance their development, which is completely legitimate. So that's all right. So compensation seems to be important. Second thing I just told you, what I think the West can do is to step up the R&D effort and engage in disruptive technology and give free licenses to poor countries. Those are the two things I would recommend very strongly. What I would not recommend is to have a low carbon price for emerging countries. And let me explain why. I know there is a lot, especially from India actually, but there is a lot of resistance to the idea of carbon pricing among emerging countries on the basis that the West has financed its growth and its development through pollution, and now this development has been hindered by carbon pricing. However, what's going to happen in the future is that most emissions will be actually coming from India, China, Brazil, and many other developing countries or middle-income countries, it depends. Now, the US produces a lot, but even if we assume the US gets its act together, if there is no carbon price among emerging and poor countries, then that's the end. Because there will be so much pollution, so many coal mines, etc., that global warming is very fast. So my recommendation, and I know there's a lot of resistance to that, is actually don't give up on carbon price, because you'll be the first victims of that. The planet is going to warm up very fast, because most of the emissions will be coming from emerging markets. What you should do instead is basically ask a rich country to get their act together, both in terms of R&D and in terms of compensation, and also in terms of carbon pricing, because we should not forget carbon pricing is still extremely low. It may be 80 euros in Europe or $80 in Europe per ton of carbon. In the US, it's more like $5, which it is in many countries in China, for example, $5 as well. It's way too low. I mean, we never succeed with such prices. So that will be my recommendation. It could be a controversial recommendation, but that's So let me say a few words about social responsibility. So before I do that, I'm okay, you don't mind. You can take the microphone away from me. The family is here. So just think about how our societies are organized, how economies are. It's not, it's in a simple way. Almost every economy in the world now uses markets. We live in market economies. Okay. Why? Simply because markets are efficient in allocating scarce resources. Okay. And when you compare South Korea and North Korea, East Germany with West Germany, etc., etc., I mean, there's no question about it. It's much more efficient at creating incentive and allocating the scarce resources. But no, we economists we spend our life working on market failures. Yeah. My entire career research, and I'm not the only one, has been devoted to market failures. How to regulate big firms, how to regulate public utilities, how to regulate banks, and so on and so forth. I could go on and on. There are lots of market failures which have to do with market power, with asymmetric information, with externalities. Pollution is one, it's a market failure. Inequality is a market failure because there is no reason why the market will deliver the kind of equality we want. So markets are very efficient, but they often fail, and that's why you need a state to regulate them. The state who is a referee as opposed to player. That's my view. It's explained in economics of economic growth. And so it's up to the government to do it. Unfortunately, the government often fails as well. And the best example of that is climate change. There's no reason why private citizens or firms will economize on carbon. They have no incentive to. So that's why you need a carbon price to incentivize that. But if the governments don't do that, they fail. And we are in the situation we are in today because of that. But what happens then? If the market fails and the government fails, you have this twin failure. Who's going to do the job? Well, you and me. Civil society, right? And that's the only thing that remains. And that's why there is so much talk nowadays about social responsibility and ESG criteria, environment, social, and governance criteria. Okay? Now, economists have been divided on this. Actually, a famous quote by Milton Friedman was Nobel Laureate 40 years ago, I don't remember, a long time ago. And he had this article in the New York Times. It was not even an academic article. It was saying the responsibility of business is to maximize profit. Okay. Very good. Business maximize profit, and what he didn't say, but was implicitly in things. It's up to the government to actually do it so. So that was, this is Milton Friedman, and that's what he said. His colleague at Chicago, also Nobel Prize winner, Ronald Coase, basically said, okay, but then usually the market is run by corporation and by the shareholders of this corporation, or majority investor of the corporation, and there are many stakeholders who are not represented in the governance structure. And then said, why don't you write a contract to protect those stakeholders? They can be the workers, they can be minority investors, they can be others. And basically trying, don't read that, but trying to actually ensure that that things go right. Okay? Now, I already told you that our economies are run in a sense around two principles: the market economy, which you can identify with an space, and regulation. So one of the people who work on regulation was people who actually work on externalities and the internalization of externalities to a price. Okay? Okay, so let me skip that because I want to discuss it with. Okay, let me just say, if governments fail, so it's up to civil society to do something. And something I think you will agree with me is what matters is not looking green. What matters is being green. So only impact matters, not posturing. Actually, there are a bunch of people who say the same thing. They will say that, Peter Singer, for example, is a philosopher, and he says, the most good you can do. So you would like actually to do the best for society. And this requires, and I'm coming back to a theme I had before, this requires good information, a good understanding of economic mechanism. Okay? And I'm going to conclude with that because that's actually quite important. So we face informational challenges when we want to be in a socially responsible way. We need data collection along the value chain to see, for example, how much carbon was emitted. We need, for example, we need investment to be additional. So, for example, the Kyoto mechanism said you can get this money, those free permits, only if you have made an investment which was additional, meaning it will not have taken place in the absence of this subsidy, which is always very difficult to prove because you never observe the contract. Okay? That's difficult. So, for example, let me give you an example. If I invest in a hydroelectric plant in Norway, there is a lot of water in Norway. One of those many hydroelectric plants in Norway. I look green because I actually invest in a firm which is green, doesn't emit CO2, it's wonderful. Except that this plant already exists. So what did I do? I mean, I did nothing for the planet because this plant already exists. And actually, my willingness to invest in that firm means that there is a windfall profit for its owner, but no change for the planet. So there is a big debate, and maybe you can contribute to that. There's a big debate, and those are very complex issues. The debate is about exclusion versus vesting tax. So if you think about socially responsible investment, one thing you can do is basically say, I'm not going to invest in oil and gas and those dirty industries. Okay, that's fine. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Some people say, no, we should invest in cars. So if the government decides that we should keep driving cars with a fossil fuel motor, mechanic one, then we are going to keep polluting, right? And we are going to use gasoline. Now, perhaps it's very important that the oil companies actually compete to be the cleanest among the oil companies. So they can emit less CO2 as well. The refining process, plugging the wells and so on. They can do lots of things, the transportation, lots of things to reduce their CO2 footprint. And, some people will say, you should not be investing in oil. Some other people will say, you should actually invest in those oil companies which put a tremendous effort to reduce their CO2 emissions. This is a very complex thing. Okay? And don't look too green. They are going to think that I'm not nice with our friends the Germans. They've done lots of good things, as I said. But again, in the energy, they have this policy that they got rid of their nuclear plants. Okay, fine. But what did they do with that? Well, they invested in renewables, which was nice. But they also invested a lot in coal, and including coal from Poland. From Poland. Is that green? No. In the end, you have to look at the impact, and that's really what. Okay. So, if I had to think about my social responsibility, I would say it's very important also to put pressure on the state. Get your act together. Put pressure on governments all over the world, including your own government, so as to behave better. Okay? And that's something that we are going to test. You should not be pretending you're acting when you're not acting. Don't greenwash. And that's part of our social responsibility. So if the government is not doing what it should be doing in the matter of the environment, we should put pressure on the government. And there are so many examples around the world that there's a lot of things to do. So climate is a time bomb. There are many other time bombs. Some of them we deal with in the report we already Russia. I'm a bit worried with the war in Ukraine, for example. There is more and more inward-looking attitudes. Okay, I don't want high energy prices. I'm going to keep polluting. But we need to think more. We need to think about use economics and social sciences, and think about the notion of the common good. And that's really how this happened here. I would like to conclude with this. The report with Olivier Blanchard is available on the web. It's in English and as well as in French. And you can advertise it for Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an enlightening session. May I request you to be seated and then maybe. After such a scintillating address, may I declare the House open for questions. I would request the volunteers, maybe they can reach out to the persons raising their hands.
Really enlightening lecture, sir. Thank you. Thank you. You're talking about PhD. But they said that the implementation of PhD model. So how this modern PhD theory can be translated in a cost-effective manner, or can be bring it to actually the
Thank you. It's a very good question. Well, we are still discussing that all over the world. So in Europe, for example, we are setting up, the European Union is setting up a taxonomy of what's green and what's not. And you can imagine there are lots of controversies. And just take gas, for example. Gas became the pretty well. It's not gas. No. Is gas green? Basic answer is no. Right.
Yeah.
Because gas pollutes a lot. But is gas green for Poland? The answer is yes. Because the alternative is coal. And coal emits twice as much CO2 as gas. So you see the kind of difficulty we face. There was a debate about the French nuclear power. You know, from the point of view of CO2, it's an operator. It's no good. You know, so there are all those debates about what is green and what's not. They're surfacing in the ESG criteria, for example. But they're also surfacing many other policies. For example, if the French government uses green, for example, greenness as a selection process for suppliers, for example, or the central bank chooses its investments on the basis of the taxonomy, then that's a lot of impact as well. So that's really the difficulty. I would say we need information, but we need to actually measure the pollution along the supply chain, which is not always easy because the supply chain is often through a number of countries, and it's not easy to measure. But we need also guiding principle, and that's what I was aiming at, which is that it's not that easy to have good principle. Again, I can drink gas cars have to be very green or has to be very brown, depending on the circumstance. I can see an electric car to be very green or to be brown. That's one. It's actually very hard to actually have that's a beauty. And you've seen by now that I'm advocate for carbon pricing. And that's what the beauty of carbon pricing is, that we don't have to decide. It's all in the price.
Thank you so much for your wonderful insight that you have given today. I have a question about carbon sequestration. You didn't talk about that. I have a dilemma actually. You look like a very strong votary of polluters pay principle. And if Kujar's curve is a reality, then I think the developing countries will have no chance to reach that level. That's one. Second, let's talk about a country like Bhutan, which is nearby India, and it has decided to have 72% of it has 72% of forest cover right now, and it is in their constitution that they will maintain 60% of forest cover for all time to come. Now, I'm wondering that why this thing is getting all kinds of heat waves because of the carbon sequestration. There's a lot of debt for nature swap has happened, and a lot of European countries have funded them and stopped them from cutting the trees for the logging operations, right? So I lived in Bhutan for about 7 years. So this is one dilemma that is in my mind and going on first. I think you're the right person to tell you what is the reality of it. How a country like Bhutan is so committed will suffer just because the carbon emission is happening in the rest of the world, especially the Kyoto Protocol you referred. US backed out. So can you throw the light why US backed out of Kyoto?
Okay, so why did the US step out of the Kyoto Protocol? And of course, because of public opinion like in every country. But more seriously, Kyoto Protocol actually had a number of interesting policies, but it had a big flaw, which is that it was only a few countries which made commitments and many other countries didn't. So it basically led to unraveling. Actually, even Europe, if you think about Europe was actually the one who really tried to implement Kyoto seriously. It set up this the organ trading system, ETS system, the cap and trade. But then there was a recession of 2008. So less demand for energy. And there were various other reasons, and the price of carbon on the ETS market went down to low levels, actually below 10 euros actually. And basically the European said that happened. They didn't say that, but basically they said, oh, the other countries are doing nothing, so why should we? So they let the price fall. They didn't try to stabilize the price or make it contingent at the time on economic activity, for example, which you have done. So that's the issue, is that everybody feels it's up to the others to do the job, right? And that's why everybody has to be committed at some point, in some way. You talk about your first right of carbon sequestration. Well, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Some people I know said, let's not invest our money in that. Some others say, no, we should invest. The case for not investing is that basically we continue producing fossil fuel. If carbon sequestration, capture and sequestration is in place. The case for actually investing in that technology is that I think, unfortunately, fossil fuel is going to be still around for a long time with disastrous consequences. So if we can at least capture most of it, we really have to capture most of it, of course, because otherwise it will be an excuse to continue polluting. But that could be good, and I think we will need that technology as well. Yeah, the general thing, I'm not a scientist, but even the scientists, and that's normal, they don't always know what's going to work. Is it going to be hydrogen? Is it going to be this and that? And the answer is we don't know in advance. It's like for vaccine, right? We have to try the various things, not putting all our eggs in the same basket. and really put some effort into R&D. So, as in my view, I think carbon sequestration and capture is actually probably useful. I may be wrong, but it's, on deforestation, well, I think a country we actually has carbon sinks as opposed to carbon sources should be rewarded for. It's the same thing. If it's like sequestration and so on. If you are taking stuff out, it's actually good to against climate change. So you should be rewarded for that. And hopefully, you can appeal to social responsibility, or you can appeal to significance. So maybe in Brazil, with Bolsonaro being gone for the moment, maybe the policy would be more respectful of the environment, maybe. But in general, you cannot just count on good intention. You also need to have an incentive scheme, and that should be part of it, in my view.
And we are so nice of you on a part of COP27 and G20 summit going on next month in India. Point is that how the climate change and renewable energy for sustainable development goal. There are two questions. First is, I'm living in India. I'm not living in Finland or Germany or Australia. The climate is different to different countries. So there should be one large local climate change act to be introduced. I'm living in India, so Indian government should be introduce the local climate change act. Second, the part of my friend the ESG. ESG means environment, social governance. It should be a part of social responsibility and act as a allowances. So my madam is not here, but is one. I suggest to secretary, there should be a ESG rule in Rajasthan. So Rajasthan state becomes the first state in India to make the environment social responsibility for the renewable energy system in India. Because I am Raj Kumar from CSTV on renewable energy, particularly solar technology, gets the result in Rajasthan in the topmost state in the solar energy promotion. So how to ESG to be utilized of the ESG and allowance? There should be act, there should be rule in Rajasthan.
So the decentralized method has been around for some years. Like each country, and of course, each state within each country, has decided to do something among to do this. And and this is what an economist predicted. In the absence of incentives, people do the few things but not much. And that's true also for countries. We are right way to be down. So at some point, the only way we're going to solve this issue is by having more countries, most countries actually, sign that. So is it going to be the G20? I don't know. Because, in the G20, you have a number of people who are hostile. Not a lot of countries who are hostile to any drastic measure against fossil fuel. Right? And it's hard. Should it be the G7? Should it be what? I don't know, honestly. And economists have in mind a climate club, so get the big emitters together. At least they would agree 7 or 8 big emitters around the world. So, US, Europe, Russia, India, China. The exact number, I don't know, but the coalition of countries say, let's get our act together and let's do something. And then we put pressure on everybody else to join the coalition. Maybe through border tax adjustment or whatever, but we are going to actually put pressure. And now, that was, our view was before the election of Donald Trump in the US. And of course, with the election of Donald Trump, this strategy could not work very well. That's difficult what I hope is that the younger generation are going to put a huge amount of pressure on that one. Actually, to say, no, no, you pretend you are brilliant. Oh, the governments always pretend they are brilliant. Comes to the same. Everybody pretends to be great. Now, let's see what you do. And let's do it in a cost-efficient way. Part of the demonstration sometimes are not well oriented in sense because it's nice to say I want 200 subsidies, but yeah, in the end you have to do something which is feasible. And if we don't use the most cost efficient way, then the cost of fighting climate change is going to be even higher. And it's going to be very, very hard actually to have anything going on. So we have to put, and I guess the younger, unfortunately, our generation should have, my generation should have put more pressure than it hasn't. That generations sometimes with various things.
Thank you so much, sir. Proceeding ahead with the program, may I request Professor Gigi Levison to come on the stage.
Thank you so much for your welcome. I'm very pleased here to speak on behalf of the French Embassy. I will be very short. I just want to highlight that today, thanks to Professor Tirole, we have an overview of what's going on in France. France is a country of science, it's a country of teaching, and it's a country where we welcome all international students. I just want to give you two numbers. The first one is that in France, half of our PhD students are from abroad, 45%. And all the Indian students are really welcome in France in many topics in music. The second key number I would like to give you is 2,000. 2,000 is a number of masters that are right now totally taught in English. Professor Tirole already mentioned this at the beginning of his talk, and I want to refresh this because we, once again, the Indian students, the Indian faculties are very welcome in France, and we want to work together for very fruitful cooperation. Thank you so much.
Words would not suffice to acknowledge our thanks for the guest speaker today. May I request Professor G. Sitayaj to propose a formal vote of thanks. Please, sir.
At the outset, I welcome Professor Joe, Nobel Laureate in Economic Sciences, and Mrs. Malaviya Tirole, and I thanks for giving excellent contemporary talk and coming from all the way from the France. On behalf of MNIT family, I welcome Mrs. Usha Sharma, Chief Secretary of Rajasthan. Due to some urgent meeting, she left, but she gave around 45 minutes to us, and I especially from extremely busy schedule and accepting our invitation. I welcome Professor Nitin Seth, my close friend and graduate at IIT Delhi, Director, CEFIPRA, for giving us an opportunity to host subsidy at MNIT. I welcome Dr. Veera Revisan, Scientific Officer in French Embassy, New Delhi, and visiting us for this event. I also welcome officials from DST, New Delhi, for sparing their valuable time and different logistics. I'm thankful to all vice chancellors and directors of reputed institutions for sparing time for this enlightening talk. I heartily thank to our distinguished guest, Dr. Nivedita Bisoi, for coming this event from all the way from IIT Delhi. I'm thankful to our all academicians, industry participants, students who are attending the event in online and offline mode. I'm thankful to our dynamic director, Professor Padi, for giving support, guidance for organizing this event today. I thanks to all my faculty colleagues and students for participation in this prestigious event. I thanks to all my friends from electronic and print media for excellent coverage before and after the event. I thank to my core team, Professor Raman Mittal, Professor Rakesh Jain, Professor Manju Singh, Dr. Deepti Sharma, Dr. Malaviya, Dr. Satish, Dr. Prerna Jain, Dr. Amar Patnaik, and Dr. Mirza for their untiring efforts to make this event a success. I'm also thankful to all our student volunteers, including Roman, for their hard work and dedication to make this event a grand success. The students, is the backbone of all the program, and they are working untiring with us. And so with this, I again welcome and thanks to all of you, and I invite all of you for hiking outside.
Long live India and France friendship.